Imagine, 5 million years ago, in a world still untamed and untouched by modern humans, there lived a group of hunters, fierce, fast, and intelligent. They didn't hunt alone. They hunted in packs. And they never failed. This is the true story of Pliocrocutta, ancient killers forgotten by history, yet they left a trail of terror across the African plains. Silently they stalked, attacked, and disappeared. But what happens when the hunter becomes the hunted? This story isn't just about predators. It's about dominance, strategy, and a deadly battle between two ancient powers. You'll witness facts revealed, mysteries hidden in fossils, and surprises that modern scientists never expected. Watch the full story. And after watching, share your thoughts in the comments. Does this creature deserve to be called the deadliest hunter of the past? 5 million years ago, the earth was still wild. Giant trees towered over valley sides, and expanses of grassland stretched as far as the eye could see. In a region we now know as East Africa, a thick fog often blanketed the land at dawn. From the fog, faint sounds could be heard. Heavy breathing. Then, silence. A young antelope had separated from its group, smelling the water from a creek below the hill. But another scent crept in at the same time. The scent of blood. And the scent of a predator. Look. Nothing. But from behind the thorny bushes, a pair of eyes blazed. Not just one. 3 pairs. 6 pairs. They stood still. Waiting. This was Pliocrocutta diatrichi, an ancient predator previously known only through fragments of jawbone and teeth found buried in layers of red earth. But that day they were real. And they were hungry. They were no ordinary hunters. They didn't attack alone. They hunted together. Like wolves, but much bigger, stronger, and more vicious. Their skeletons resembled modern hyenas, but more compact. Their teeth, blunt at the front, sharp at the back. Perfect for tearing flesh and crushing bone. One of them crept closer. The antelope stood still. The wind carried the mist away, and the next second, a black figure darted out. Panicked cry rang out. But only for a moment. Hours later, the herd sat in silence, slowly chewing their kill. All that remained were bloodstains, tufts of fur, and faint footprints that would soon be lost in the wind. In the distance, a prehistoric elephant watched from behind an acacia tree, as if knowing that the threat wasn't over. They would come again. And they wouldn't be alone. Millions of years have passed since the trail of that hunting party was lost in time. But in a barren East African plain, a long dry season is unearthing long-buried secrets. The wind ruffles the surface of the soil, revealing something protruding from the dust. Large, thick, with broken but still sharp molars. The archaeological team led by Dr. Lina Ayub arrived at the site in the 4th month of the expedition. They had no idea what they would find. The bones were scattered in a haphazard circle. An antelope leg bone, some ribs, and 3 pieces of an upper jaw from a species they had never seen before. The jaw didn't belong to a lion, nor did it belong to any modern-day hyena. "Look at this," Lena said, pointing to symmetrical bite marks at the base of the thigh bone. They were targeting a weak spot. This attack was coordinated. They began to rearrange the bones. Everything pointed to a pattern, a group attack. Claw marks, tooth scratches, and crushed bone fragments indicated that the victim had not only been killed, but also completely eaten. Meanwhile, far from the excavation site, in a small museum in Nairobi, a young researcher named Imran was poring over a fossil catalog archived since 1974. One of the fossils looked familiar. He matched the catalog code with the latest data from the Lena excavation site. His hands were shaking. He whispered softly, "This is the same species. But this fossil was found hundreds of kilometers from the Lena site. They didn't just live in one group. They spread out, in large herds." It didn't take long before Lena and Imran met. Silently they knew one thing. Whatever these creatures were, they weren't just local hunters. They were organized hunters. And they had dominated much of the sub-Saharan region millions of years ago. But something still bothered him. One of the skulls bore a very neat cut. Not from teeth, not from claws, but like a sharp tool. These creatures weren't just hunters. Perhaps they were hunted too. The African sky turned gray. The first rain after a drought fell heavily over the excavation site. The ground turned muddy, and the water carried tiny fragments of bone out of the cracks in the rocks. Among the antelope skeletons and predator fossils, something unusual emerged. A flat, thin fragment with jagged edges. Lena wiped the mud from its surface. It was no ordinary stone. It reflected light. Tucked beneath it was a small, charred-looking bone fragment. Imran stared at it silently, then picked up a spectral scanner. High silica content. This isn't natural, he murmured. This is handmade. The other fossils began to be re-examined. The skull of one of the Pliocrocutta bore the mark of a blunt blow to the back of the head. The wound was deep and fatal. But the most surprising thing wasn't that. A sharp fragment embedded in the lower ribs formed a perfectly symmetrical angle. They began to realize a truth that had been hidden for millions of years. These ancient hunters, long considered the masters of the land, may have fallen victim to something else. Not predators. But another species also lived in groups. Also strategized. Also knew when to strike. Primordial humans. Early evidence suggests that Homo habilis, one of the earliest human ancestors, coexisted, and perhaps competed directly, with these hunting bands. And more than that, humans also began using tools. Stone knives, bonals, and fire. Lena opened the expedition log and wrote down 2 words. Counterhunting. Not far away, a secretary bird perched on a tree branch, staring down at the muddy ground below. A flash of lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating the scattered remains of bones. Among the bones, a single Pliocrocutta skull remained intact. Its eyes were blank, its jaws open. As if to say, in the distant past, even the most ruthless hunters had to face something more terrifying than mere hunger. And from there history changed. Not by strength, but by ingenuity.